When we featured Folkstyle national champion and Stanford University wrestler Dawson Sihavong as a rising star in the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame, it quickly became apparent that Dawson's journey to the top began a generation earlier in war-torn Laos. Nara Sihavong came to the United States as a refugee in 1978. A mere 7 years later, he made history when in 1985 he joined the wrestling team at George Mason University and became the first known Lao American to compete at the NCAA Division I level. Nara would go on to have a successful career, founding companies and building philanthropy organizations, all while giving back to the sport that he loves. For over 30 years, Nara has helped a new generation of wrestlers achieve their dreams, including coaching his own son, Dawson.
Well, Nara, thanks for coming on to the show. Obviously, I'm Co, and that's my partner, John, and we're excited to hear about your story. So, especially, 85 was when you started wrestling?
That's when I graduated. I started wrestling 3.5 years prior to that. Yeah.
So you wrestled in high school?
Yes.
Okay. 85 was the first collegiate year, though.
Yes. 85 to 89 was when I was at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia.
Okay,
yeah.
we'll get on that. Let me just do a quick intro to the show, and then we'll get rolling with the questions. I don't want you going too far ahead.
Okay, sounds.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of C4 Podcast, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. My name is Coach Detka, and I'm here today with my co-host, John Messina. We have a very interesting guest on our podcast today. As an athlete, he's a wrestler, or he wrestled in high school in the 80s and in college. So we don't hear of too many wrestlers, from, our people, right? Lao people or Southeast Asians. We hear soccer, tennis, stuff like that. But when you get into wrestling, that's definitely a different breed. So I'm going to let John introduce our guest and take it from there.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's John Messina. Our guest today is Nara Sihavong. Nara, what's kind of exciting about you is through our intense research at the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame, we believe you are the first athlete of any kind from Laos to compete at the Division I level in any sport. So congratulations on that amazing accomplishment. I know you're calling in from Hawaii today, so you got to be loving life over there. I did wear a tacky Hawaiian shirt just for the interview today. So,
it's okay.
Yeah, but hey, we're excited to talk to you because your story is interesting. You came to the United States as a child, and it was really just a short time later that you were a Division I athlete. So we'd like to go ahead and start at the beginning. I know you were born in Laos, Vientiane area. Tell us about life in Laos, your journey out, and kind of landing in Hawaii.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, John and Co, and also inviting me to speak to you today, as well as doing a little write-up on my son Dawson. Life in Laos was, as I remember it, was quite nice. We lived in Vientiane. I was born there, and actually, because Laos was a French colony, our family were educated in French school.
Yeah.
So I didn't even go to a Lao school. I taught myself to read and write Lao and Thai years after actually I got to Hawaii. My dad told my mother saying that if I don't come home one day, he was working on a national coalition government between the communists, the royal government, the kingdom, and the nationalists. But I guess things went sideways, and my dad was a minister of finance up to that point for the country of Laos. He held a few prominent positions. But he says, hey, one day if I don't come home, take the kids across to our family in Nong Khai. So my mom did that, took us one by one. She was quite a a woman. I always tell people that, I could never fill my mom's shoes. She raised 6 children. So we got to Nong Khai. It just happens that her younger brother was working for USAID and he was in Hawaii. So he sponsored us to Hawaii. We were supposed to end up in Paris, where most of my parents and my dad's side of the family was there. So, but I felt that Hawaii, it was the best place to be, because it's multi-ethnic. We didn't have a hard time assimilating in. Made a lot of friends right away, and it was a great place to have grown up.
Yeah, and I know in Hawaii, the Lao community there, because the climate's similar, right? There's a lot of farming. So for some people, it's a very similar lifestyle, right? That had come from Laos and were resettled there. My wife had some family that was resettled there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of successful Lao families got into farming. In fact, one of the Lao family here hold, I believe, the largest private farm on Oahu. They have over 2,500 acres of land that they farm.
So what year did you guys land in Hawaii?
We got here in 1978.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, you would have been in Nong Khai probably the same time as my wife and her extended family. And a lot of our other guests were in Nong Khai refugee camp at the 78, 9, 80, like that. So It's kind of interesting. So you grew up in Hawaii. Tell us a little bit about how you got into wrestling and how you ended up in Virginia.
Oh yeah, exactly right. Hawaii all the way to Virginia was about 7,000 plus miles away, as far as you can possibly go from one end of the country to the other.
Yeah.
But my mother, she was always big in education, and back in then, of course, my father was educated. He was sent to France to do his economics at the HEC, which is kind of like the I guess the Harvard Business School equivalent of France. So she always say, look, education. Hawaii was a bit tough, trying to get away from also the bad crowd. I was having too much fun with my friends that I grew up with. So grades was dropping, and she said, why don't you go live with Auntie for a while in DC suburb. So I agreed to it. I went, and she made a deal, say, you go for a year. If you don't like it, you come back. So I thought it was a pretty fair deal. Growing up in Hawaii, you try your hands at the different sports because of your friends are doing it. Play basketball, play baseball. I actually loved football. But because, both of my uncles fought professionally in Muay Thai, they call it Muay Thai, but it's in Lao. It's Muay Bolan, means ancient art of fighting, right? Muay Bolan. And so we learned that. And so being little, you get picked on a lot by the Polynesians. you fighting in the playground all the time, because I was the eldest son. I got my younger siblings, 3 brothers. They were always being picked on, so I had to be the one that take the brunt of the scraps. So, but it was good because we knew how to fight back then, before all this big MMA stuff came out, and no kids at that age didn't really know how to fight at elementary level. So it paid off. We had our own little Muay Thai club that my uncle ran for myself, my brothers and our siblings and our cousins, and we had a lot of kids. So my mom sent me to Virginia, probably just get away from the crowd, but she understood that they have a good education. Fairfax County public school system was the number 1 public school system in the country, and remains to be, I believe, in the top 5. You got Alexandria, you got Loudoun County. They do a real good job there. So I went and just accidentally stumbled, played football there, and I was like, okay, this is a big man sport. So it was like, I just happened to cruise around the campus and peek my head into the wrestling room, and the coach invited me in and got me to try the sport, and I fell in love with it. And it was one of those sports that's like, I think, boxing or whatever, you fight in your either age division or weight division. I mean, football, basketball, forget about us guys, Lao, right? We're small. You can get run over. So I felt it was also wrestling, one of the toughest sports out there. It fit well. I enjoyed the challenge. And so my coaches were extremely encouraging and supportive. And One of my key coaches, Steve Schreiber, he was the one who really got myself trained better with the elite guys in the room. So I really fell in love with it and kept up with wrestling throughout high school.
So what was it like? Because I mean, you have no parents there or anything. You're out there going to tournaments, winning matches, but did you really have any local support from any family?
This is a really good question, John. During that time, Southeast Asians or even Asians as a whole, sport wasn't something that is, how do you say, favored. They go, you go to school or you go to work or do both, and you help out around the family. There's no such thing as extracurricular sports or other, going to the band and all those things. I tried my hands, luckily, at all those different things, much just because I was started to become more Americanized and tried my hands at those things. But yes, I was there. I mean, my aunt, wasn't definitely not a big sports person, so it was pretty much myself. I made a lot of great friends on the team, support from my coaches, and they really became my family. And to this day, some of my teammates, both from high school and college, are still close. I'm still very close with them. So, but yeah, it was different. I think we have two sides of it. One is that being new arrivals to the country, the culture isn't big into organized sports, right? Not even in Laos. I mean, I don't know if they even had organized teams in soccer or whatnot. But in the U.S., I think our culture had to go through a process of assimilation, a process of experience in terms of the parents and younger parents, let's say in my generation, who actually did sport or who didn't, have been around it long enough whereby then their children now are participating and they're okay with it because it's part of the norm. But it wasn't the norm when I started, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Ko, your experience was similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nara's a little bit older than me. I do remember one time my brother, he got to play basketball. And I remember one time we were in our rooms and he was packing his uniform to go away. And I remember asking him, it's like, is mom and dad going to go or can I go watch you? And he's just like, no, I'm just going with my team. And I kind of like, I was like 5 years old then, right? So I had no understanding. I was like, why wouldn't, I'm innocent. I'm young and innocent, right? I was like, why wouldn't mom and dad go and watch you play? I wanted to go watch you play. But in our family, sports wasn't a big deal. It was all about education. I tried asking if I could play football, but they shot that down because I was too small. You're too small, you're going to get hurt. And I didn't even I actually wanted to wrestle too. And which would have worked well because there's weight divisions.
Right.
But it's just my older brother, he's he told me these stories of you want to roll around with these guys that don't, this is him saying this is how we were, this is how certain, Laotians think, but you want to roll around with a bunch of guys that don't even wash their uniforms, and I thought about that. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but it's just his train of thought, his reason for thinking, right? He wasn't even thinking about you could be good, you could be great, you could learn a lot, you can build physical strength and endurance. His was just like, man, I don't know. I think he was a ladies' man or something growing up, so he didn't really care for sports. He was out there working and making money because he was 18 years old. So I guess he didn't want to see me waste. According to him, it was a waste of time doing sports. So I didn't get much support from, the parents or the older siblings.
Yeah. What city did you grow up in?
Elgin, Illinois.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah, we came here in 1975. So we stayed in Lima, Western Ohio for about a year. And then, 75 was Western Ohio. Then 76 was Elgin. So we had a big wave of Laotians coming in around 78, 79.
Yeah, I understand that Elgin had a big Lao community there. My first cousin lived there when she first moved in Elgin.
Yeah, you're like I think one of the first Laotians I've heard where you guys got to settle in Hawaii. That would have been an awesome place.
Yeah,
because like temperature wise and environment wise would have been very similar. We came over here in 75 and within a month it started snowing and we were like, what is this?
Yeah.
So
experiencing snow was a lot of fun. I moved from Hawaii. I'm still like to wear my surf shorts, my flip flop. We call them flip flop in Virginia, but in Hawaii we call them slippers. And I run outside. It was first snow probably like in November in DC, and I'm out there. My neighbors probably thinking, "Who's this crazy kid?" Right? I was just fascinated by snow.
Yeah,
so, yeah, it was good. It's a good experience, but definitely Hawaii's home for me. I love Hawaii and the multicultural. We call it. There's a reason why we call it the Aloha State. It's the friendliest place in the U.S. for sure. But it was good. Made a lot of good friends. I've got friends that go back to elementary school. So
and you're still there. You're still there right now, right?
I moved back 2 years ago. I went to California. Was there for 15 years. Raised my kids. And with Dawson, that's where he went when he was about 3.5, and pretty much grew up in the California school system and wrestled there. Yeah, but and then once they went off to college, I promised myself that I'd move back because this is home for me.
Yeah, I love it. I've spent time on the Big Island. It's incredible. But Nara, one thing that's really incredible about your story, because I think I told you my daughter's going to be a Division I athlete here this fall. Your son's a Division I athlete. It's not easy to get to that level, and you did it like in 3.5 years. And how did you get there? And tell us about your time at George Mason.
It's I was very lucky. My coach, we had a group of elite kids in the room, and he would take us to a lot of the tournaments off season. You really basically got to wrestle all year round, and so I had a lot of catching up to do. Even back then, though, we didn't start as early as things are now. Wrestling is a lot bigger than it used to be. And women's wrestling, girls wrestling is the fastest growing sports in the country. A lot of people don't realize that. And more high schools are adding programs. They're adding state sanctioned tournament for the girls exclusively. Yep. Hawaii is one of the first to have done that in 1998. And so yeah, back then it was just catching up. I think I was decent enough and then I loved the sport. I felt okay. It was good enough where I could continue to learn more and get better. So going to Mason was nearby, so it was good because it was only 20 minutes from my high school, and got to improve my skills and made great friends, close friends. Some of my best friends who I'm in touch with every day to today are my teammates. So yeah, and we had a young coach then, and he was really good. I mean, within a couple of years, the team was the #1 in the conference. So I learned a lot from him as well. Yeah, so he was the one who really encouraged me. He asked me, so, if you still enjoy the sport, you ought to try your hands at coaching. And it's like, really? I went to the neighborhood high school, like my senior year and stuff, help out here and there just to get an additional workout when the team's traveling and stuff, and I wasn't, I would go help out. So I knew I liked it, helping out the high school level. So when my coach sort of asked me about that, and I'll give it a try. So my athletic director at my high school offered me the head coach position when I got out of college. So I took it. I wasn't teaching, so I worked outside, and that of course was difficult because the scheduling and all that. And I was really young, 22, 23 years old, head coach of the program. And I did it for a couple of years and then realized, okay, it's going to be too tough, but I still want to do it. I can be the assistant coach and bring somebody else to run the head coach position, do all the paperwork and whatnot. And I just like to come and teach the technique and run the practice and go to the tournaments. So that's kind of, I was able to manage to do that continuously for the last 30 years. So it's been great.
So that's the difference between head coach and assistant, how the head coach does the paperwork and the assistant really gets to do the fun stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, young, I was still competitive. I kept competing after college in like the open division and whatnot. So it's paperwork was something that I was, wanting to do, and having a full-time job outside made it even more difficult. So, but it was a good fit, and I kept being in the room and working out with the high school kids and competing on the side and stuff. So, and being able to learn from the other coaches too. I was always luckily was part of successful high school programs. Like in Virginia, I coach at Woodson High, Annandale, Robinson, Lake Braddock. So those were the top programs in the region, and learn from the older coaches who have been very successful and have been coaching for years in their late 50s and 60s. So that's always been good.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, you're trying to balance coaching and a career, and you had quite a business career. Tell us a little bit about some of your business and the companies you founded.
Oh yeah. I was always at that entrepreneur's flair. When my mom came, within 2 years in Hawaii, she started the first Thai restaurant in Hawaii, and her best friend started another right after it. Back then, Thai restaurant was not really a thing. Fortunately, her entrepreneurship kind of was built into us early. I was her first dishwasher, right? My younger sister, was the bus girl and waitress, and my other older sister was her co-chef. So we all worked their family business, and mom was back in Laos. She ran 12 companies of our own family.
Wow.
So she carried a lot of that entrepreneurship with her, and she knew how to do business. And even though she didn't speak a word of English, but just people love Thai food. So she go, okay, I'll cook if they were willing to eat it and pay for it. So, and that restaurant was really paid for a lot of our upbringing and many things that helped us going to college and stuff. All my siblings went to college with the exception of my older sister. She became a chef. But the entrepreneurship part, is the part that allowed me to, while working for corporations, coming out of college, I got a regular job, with insurance corporation initially doing the marketing part, and then I jumped to the telecommunication side. By 2000, I started my own company on the side. It's an ISP. It's still tied to telecom, but it was a small internet service provider in Honolulu. And that side business allowed me to keep growing. And by 2005, I had started a couple of companies, and then I decided to go on my own. And I left Sprint, who I used to work for back then, and flew the coop, so to speak, and went and started my own international telecom company. And my first work was actually in Southeast Asia, in Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, and such.
Wow, that's exciting. So did you kind of help bring internet to Laos? Is that what you were doing?
That was the idea. I mean, interestingly, in 2004, when I went there, first time I went to discuss the business opportunity was in 2002. But in 2004, Laos had a 35 megabit connection from Thailand into the country, 35 megabit for the whole country. And I was proposing to the government to connect via satellite, from Hawaii all the way to Vientiane on 155 meg pipe. So of course for them, they were basically based, they were very welcoming. They knew that I had knowledge and experience from the best of breed, company. The United States led the world in telecommunications, and Sprint was AT&T, Verizon, right? Was top of breed. And I said, look, I can bring this knowledge to you. I just need for us to work in partnership. So I was able to do business with the Lao government, the Thai companies, Cambodian companies and stuff. So it was good.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, this podcast focuses on sports, and one of the reasons we wanted to also have you on is, you've been a coach for 30 years. You coached one wrestler in particular who I think our audience would love to hear about, and that's your son, Dawson. Tell us about how it was coaching him growing up and where he's at now and the great things he's done.
Yeah, it was, it's been a godsend, to be able to have spend that much time with my son. He actually didn't like wrestling. And I was coaching in California at that time. I was part of the state championship team, Clovis, and the dominant program going back for years. And then I just kind of let him do his thing. So by third grade, most of the kids start wrestling in like first grade, even kindergarten. And I said, look, son, you got to start wrestling. And he kind of went along with it. And he hated it. He was just a happy-go-lucky kid, But the key thing about, coaching, which I actually learned a lot from my older coach who has successful sons, like the Tirapelli family, between the three brothers, they won 8 state championships. Adam, the older brother, was 2-time NCAA champ from Illinois, in fact, Champaign. And he and I coached together at Clovis. And so I learned a lot from Steve, his dad, about, okay, how did you get your kids to be to that level? So he shared a lot of that with me on make sure that they have fun at that age. They're not fighting for the national championship. They're just trying to find their bearings, right? And so groomed Dawson, but I knew that he was behind, and I converted my home garage into our home gym, our wrestling room. And so he wrestled in the local club, elite club, and he got the crap beat out of him every day, come home crying. But we would come home, do work on our own in the garage. And by 5th grade, he started in the middle of 3rd grade. By 5th grade, he caught up to most of the best kids. And by 6th grade, he was the number 1, number 2 kid in the state for his age group. And he managed to, then he realized that, okay, he's good enough. And then we progressively jump levels. Right? You work with him to right size the expectations. I guess maybe that's the best way to put it. And again, I learned a lot from the other coaches and what did they do with the boys or girls and on getting them to the high level. Not even just wrestling, in other sports too, because there's a lot of commonality. But he was quite self-motivated. Once he realized that he can win championships and sitting at that level, I asked him, I think in 8th grade, you pretty much know, okay, this is the deciding point. Where do you want to go with this sport? And I go, either you just want to have fun with it, which is fine, or if you want to do something greater, you have to decide what you really want to do, so that way we can plan properly. And he told me he wanted to be a national champion. I kind of chuckled because, not the fact that I haven't coached national champs, or we were, Clovis High School was a national champion in 2013, 5 years after he started. But I kind of chuckled because I had to list out all these things that he had to commit to, or need to know what to do, what he needs to commit to in order to get to that level. And you may not become a national champion even if you want to. It's a great goal, but it's a goal that he has to own. It's not my goal. And when he told me that, I was quite surprised, but I said, okay, all right. This is what what people do to get themselves for that opportunity to become a national champion. And he says, yeah, I'm ready to go. I go, okay, well, let's get to work then. And so he did excel. We did a lot of things that are on a national level, started with regional level, then you go to national tournaments just to measure yourself against the best kids in the country and just see where you stack up. And he did well consistently. Got top 8, which is All American status in the early years. So we knew that he was up there. So now it's just a matter of fine tuning. But on the other side of it is we also always talk about education, and because and I would ask him whether he wants to wrestle in college, and he's always told me yes. I go, well, that being the case, then you have to be a good student. I mean, not just a 3.7, 3.8. That's got to be priority. So there's a balance on that side. Yeah. Fortunately, he was really easy to coach. I mean, most of the elite kids are, for the most part, because they're self-driven. And as a coach, you're really there to mentor them and guide them in the right area. They will fall off track. I fell off track many times, and so you learn, and then you kind of pull them back on track and get back on it and keep progressing. So, but I mean, to my surprise, he had a really good high school career. California has one division. It's one of the toughest states in the country for wrestling. 27,000 boys wrestlers across the state. One division, you only crown 14 champs, one per weight class. So to place in the state of California is quite an accomplishment, and to win the state is also tough. I mean, on any given day, you take top 5 college coaches will come calling, right? They want to recruit these kids. But outside of that, coaches, especially if you want to wrestle Division I, they're looking for what kind of tournaments you wrestle. I mean, they know what tournaments to go and recruit the kids from. So if you're not at those tournaments, you probably won't get noticed. So we made sure we went to those tournaments, like the Ironman, Super 32, Fargo, which is the toughest tournament in the country, and be able to do well at those tournaments. So we train hard all year round for those type of things, while maintaining, be a good student. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing, But for me as a coach, I come to learn that I was really fortunate that I was able to wrestle and got scholarship to wrestle. And as a minority in this country, education is an equalizer. It keeps you out of trouble. Sports keeps you out of trouble. Education helps you expand your mind. And then, the kids can go off to school from doing sports and come home with a degree. Not only he will help him or herself as a person, but spread, into the community, which is really important. It's statistically shown that somebody who have done that come back is going to be a contributor to society. So, my parents weren't involved, but so what I try to help parents of a lot of the kids that I coach now is, especially the ones who are motivated and they want to keep, putting the kids into the elite level, and I said, what is your long-term goal, right? But especially if they say, of course, we would love to see our son or daughter wrestle in college. I like to help guide them through the process, because not everybody know that process. And I was fortunate enough to have had experience with many elite guys who I've coached, who went off to wrestle in college on scholarships, and now my son. And so that's real important.
Besides your son, did you along the way see an interest from other Asian, Southeast Asian American kids that wanted to try out for wrestling? Maybe because they saw an Asian coach and they thought, well, if he's a coach, I want to give out wrestling a try. Did you get a lot of that, or how was that?
I think it's always a plus for them. When I coach in Hawaii, obviously there's a lot of Asians naturally. I mean, at Punahou, I think 90% of the kids were Asians. But if you like at Clovis in California, there's also 47% Hispanics, Mexican. But it's definitely a plus. When an Asian kid see other Asian kids in the room and or coach, it gives them some level of let's say, comfort.
Yeah.
But I still think that it comes down to the family culture, because they would have to find their way into the room on their own. We could do a better job, let's say, recruiting, specific type of kids. However, it's more of a broad base. Like, let's say we did some recruitment at a program like Clovis or Buchanan, where I went afterwards, and then Bullet, where my son ended up finishing high school program with. The broadcast to recruit kids was just broad base, and so whoever feels the attraction to the sport, they'll come to the room. Yeah, I mean, but like you said, Cole, it's being that it's weight based, and being I was the lightest weight class when I first started wrestling, and then I was probably 3 weight classes up after that by the time I graduated. But it's a great sport for someone who is small, especially because there's 14 weight classes in high school level, or there's 18 in middle school level. And in Clovis, they actually have elementary school divisions. So my son started wrestling on varsity in the 4th grade for his elementary school, which is fantastic,
How when you were a wrestler, how did you deal with and that's a big thing in wrestling. How did you deal with cutting weight? And then when you became a coach, did you teach that differently? Because obviously it's not a very safe practice, right? They just want to get down to weight, make weight, weigh in, and then,
Yeah, that's a really good question. Back. Yeah, there's a lot of misnomers in the sport of wrestling that people, it's like you earlier talked about your brother saying, you want to wrestle around with those guys who don't watch their clothes. That's really, it's education. Like everything, same thing. It's all about educating. The best programs, meaning that you have a really knowledgeable coach. Those coaches are they're like at expert level. They break everything down from being a good student and how to balance your time, how to balance your rest and recovery, how to balance family life, how to balance, training, recovery, what kind of training you should get, depends on what goals you have for yourself. So, I mean, the best coaches who have wrestled in college, or even better, if you have like a world team member, a national champion from college, an Olympian in the room, I mean, their knowledge is just like a wide range. You've got wrestling coaches who never even wrestled in college. They might only wrestle 1 year in high school, and they're in the room, and they're no fault to them. It's like in any sport, it's education. Like, these high level coaches, they had their degree in wrestling. Like if you have an 8th degree black belt in karate or whatever, it's just, there's just so much more knowledge behind that person compared to somebody who's just starting out. Like when I started out, I mean, even though I wrestled in college, there was a lot of psychological part that I didn't understand as a coach that could have like motivated my kids better, right? But as I get older as I got more experience in the years of coaching, you learn to become a psychologist. You learn how to, that saying I always tell people, the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And in wrestling, different size, different personality. And so you have to work with the kids one-on-one. If one kid you see is struggling, you have to like work with that kid one-on-one. Another is excelling, you have to work with that kid one-on-one, depends on his or her goal. But yeah, the misnomer on weight cutting goal is the fact that we don't call it cutting weight, we call it weight management. I mean, the MMA guys cut like 10, 15 pounds the night before they weigh in and they rehydrate. So in wrestling, we manage the weight. If you got to cut 1 pound, it's no big deal. Some kids will cut 5 pounds max. But now they have rules. You can't be, less than 7% body fat from measurement. That's the most bottom you can go in terms of wrestling. Otherwise, you'll be breaking the rules. And even those who might be 8%, 9%, they still struggle. They just don't know how to manage their weight properly, which a lot of it has to do with eating habits, diet, and when do you start intaking food and what kind of food you should take in, cut out the junk food and all that stuff. So it's actually kind of good because it teaches them to also become real good in staying healthy.
Yeah. I remember back in high school, just as an outsider watching in, you see the wrestlers, they put on a ton of layer of sweatshirts and sweating gear, and they're out there, they're running in the sun, and they're spitting into cups. It's just like, man, that's extreme for me. I was like, that's extreme.
Yeah, we don't do any of that. You really just work it off in the room, and by doing that, that's when you get in better shape.
Yeah,
you come off easier. I mean, the friction from wrestling and drilling with your partner is the best way to drop weight.
Correct.
It's called hydration cut. We basically it's hydration cut, and you're not starving yourself. In fact, we encourage the kids to eat as often as possible. You eat, you regain energy, you can work out. The more you work out, the better shape you're in. The better shape you're in, the more competitive you are. The more competitive you are, the more success you're going to see on the mat. So these are the type of things that, based on education, you do it right. And those guys who are spitting and sitting in the sauna room and all that stuff, they're doing it all wrong. And that's how they get hurt. And those are the stories that get out to the community, and it hurts the sport because it's the ones that don't know how to do it right. It's hurting the sport, and it's preventing parents to send the kids out to wrestling. And in fact, it's one of the safest sports around if you do it right. So my college coach, Mike Moyer, he's the executive director of National Wrestling Coaches Association. They have an awesome education program for those who are coaching, and coaches certification classes and stuff. So those who really want to push their coaching career forward, whether it's a career or they're just coaching, they can do an NWCA certification course. And it's the education's there. So the more knowledgeable the coach is, the better program he or she's going to run.
Yeah, that's
I see the same thing. I see the same thing in bodybuilding, and it's like people think, near the end, these guys are doing hours and hours of cardio, and they're cutting their carbs, and they're miserable. But it's like you said, it's if there was weight management earlier in the preparation, you wouldn't have to be doing that. But unfortunately, those are the ones that the public sees. Like as an outsider for wrestling, I had no education about it, but I saw the kids sitting in saunas and spitting in the cups, but what you said makes perfect sense. You're having a game plan from way out when, and you're just managing your weight, and you're slowly, it's a nice slow dip, right? Whereas most people think it's this, but it's not. It's right. Very nice, slow and steady.
Yeah. If you're weighing on a Friday for a big tournament, we'll start dropping, managing weight starting Monday.
Mm-hmm.
You do it early. So let's say if you got to lose 5 pounds, you want to lose 3 pounds Monday, Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Then the 4th pound, Wednesday, Thursday. By Friday, you only have a pound to lose.
Yeah.
It's a cakewalk. You can literally come in and drill for 30 minutes and you'll drop half a pound, no problem. And hygiene-wise, we do not, staph infection, ringworm. Those are the type of things where it's like non-injury and you cannot wrestle. It's the worst way to sit out. So hygiene is super important. We tell the kids, shower right away. Make sure your stuff's clean. You do not want to be suffering from ringworm and not be able to wrestle for a week because you're not really injured. You have skin infection. And so for an elite wrestler to be sitting out on a ringworm, it's the worst thing for them. They go crazy because you're wrestling 2 hours a day and you're sitting around because you can't have any contact. So hygiene is super important. So all these personal development carry forth, with them throughout their life, whether they continue to wrestle in college or not. Hopefully many of the wrestlers, take with them a very healthy lifestyle post wrestling.
Hey, John, did we ask him about his collegiate record or high school record? Did we talk about that?
No, well, go ahead, Nara. If you want to tell us, we're going to jump back a little bit. Yeah, what? Maybe just tell us some of your accomplishments in college. Wrestling.
I started late. I'll be honest. I wasn't, I didn't start until my junior year, and purely it's because I was able to at least finally break the lineup. I got beat up pretty bad for the first couple of years. Basically, just a wrestling partner to the starters. But you learn a lot. You get tough. I mean, and there were my sophomore year. I remember I injured my ankle, and my had a couple of injuries that stayed with me the whole time. And I didn't start wrestle, open tournaments and stuff with the team. And then broke my hand, my wrist, my junior year, then I was out. So my senior year, I pretty much told my coach, I said, look, I just, I'm semi burnt out. And I know that they had brought in a 3-time All-American from Blair. And he really was going to be their franchise guy. Coach was very frank with me. He said, no, we need you in the room. You're the senior. We need for you to help and groom, the younger wrestlers. I said, hey, look, I'm fine with that. I'm happy to come practice, wrestle some open tournaments, and get my college degree. And he goes, and he really appreciated that. And I was also very appreciative of the fact that he guided me and made sure that I still enjoy being in the room and know that I'm contributing to the team. So that was really the gist of my college career. I felt good, the fact that I stuck with it. And then he asked me, kind of like was the one who really encouraged me to coach. So he says, if you feel like you still enjoy the sport, and he says, I know that you can contribute and pass on the knowledge to the other kids, you should coach. So that's how it went. Yeah.
That's exciting. And
well, in regards to your son, now we're switching the gears again. He said his goal was to be a national champion. Seeing where he's at now versus when he told you in the beginning, what type of progress is he making? Do you see him? Is that goal attainable in your eyes?
he is a national champion, already.
Is he a national champion?
Yeah. Folkstyle
in
national.
high school.
Yeah.
In college, during the collegiate years, there's a couple of things you can do. One is he wants to try and make the Olympic team, in Greco-Roman. There's an Olympic style, which is he's really a accomplished Greco-Roman style wrestler, and then there's freestyle. Those are the two Olympic styles. In the U.S., we wrestle what we call Folkstyle, and Folkstyle you go through the NCAA, so trying to be an All-American or even a conference champion. Then you go to the NCAA, trying to be an All-American, national champion. On the other side, during off season, all of the the collegiate guys trying to make the world team, for example, they compete in freestyle and Greco, and try to make the world team, try and make the Olympic team for Team USA. So Dawson was on the Greco Team USA Olympic development team. He when his junior year at Fargo Nationals, he pretty much did fantastic. He took third as a sophomore, so he already coming in his junior year, and everyone knew he was going to be dominant. So he kind of cruised to the finals and wrestled a really tough another Team California teammate, and somebody who he has beaten 3 times. He was up 4-0 after the first period. Going to the second period, I told him, look, you fell asleep. You thought that you had this match sealed up, but the other kid wanted more. So he came storming back and beat you. But the top 3 guys in the country are automatically part of the U.S. Olympic development team. So that was his aspiration, was trying to make the U.S. Olympic team or U.S. 4 team on the Greco side. In the meantime, during the college season, Stanford has done really well, albeit being a really good school. For the most part, they're finished in the top 20 or top 15, and I think 3 years ago, maybe like number 11 in the country. So for Stanford, that's really, really good. It's a good room, a lot of competitiveness, and they're trying to recruit the best of the best. Like Shane Griffith, who's a national champion for Stanford, he was the number 2, or I think he was the number 2 recruit in the country coming in, and the year before Dawson. And that year, I think Stanford nabbed 2 number 2s And then the year when Dawson came in, he was top 15. You know, at the highest he was ranked number 10. You know, in his weight class. So the recruitment built a really good squad. And college wrestling is a whole different ball game. You know, it's like you have grown men and they beat up on each other really, really good. And so it's an entirely different level where I can't profess to know, you know, at that level. And right now we have Coach Rob Cole there, who came from Cornell. He was very successful at Cornell, and you know, short story, year and a half ago, July, was it last year? I forgot already. Was it 2 years ago? Anyway, yeah, it was July 2020. Stanford announced they were going to cut wrestling in 10 other sports, and so we had a very tumultuous year, and immediately, you know, the team and the alumni banded together and said, no, we're going to save Stanford wrestling, a 160-year-old program. And so we fought. Parents group came together and fought and was able to get Stanford to reverse their decision. Really, at the very last hour in May of the next year, they ended up reinstating all 11 sports. So now Stanford still has a team, but they lost 2 years of recruitment. But this year now, they will gain one back, and then next year they'll have a full squad. So it's all good. Dawson still has 3 years of eligibility left, so he's trying to balance school and wrestling. It's 2 full-time jobs. So just like I told him, look, I wrestled in college. I at least I can tell you how tough it was, and Stanford is even tougher. You know, he was a valedictorian, and he's like, this thing's kicking my butt. I go, okay, I believe you. So yeah, it's a balance. And at the end of the day, I said, you know, son, just be proud of the fact that you're there, you're at one of the best university on the planet, and just focus on the important stuff. You know, he still enjoys, you know, being the leader in the room. His coaches count on him to be the leader. Now he's going to be a junior, so he's an upperclassman now, and the role changes a little bit, you know. So he's got new incoming freshmen coming in, so he's got 3 classes under him. And so he has to learn how to be a leader and contribute in different ways.
Yeah, well, he's certainly,
it helps.
yeah, he's certainly at one of the top schools. That's a great accomplishment to go to Stanford and be an athlete there. It was a tumultuous time during the pandemic for sports. We lived it too. Nara, my daughter, was going through the recruiting process at that time, and you didn't know what school might cut the sports because they were losing so much revenue from football and what have you. Like, for example, she was in deep discussions, I'll say, with the University of Iowa, and they cut their swim team, right? And then so, well, it's like, move on to the next one. And then they brought it back, but you know, they I think they lost most of the top swimmers and all that, and so she found a home. But it was a really, really challenging time for a lot of young people who were either at schools or trying to get recruited in these Olympic sports, especially.
Yeah.
So.
Well, kudos to your daughter. I know one of the things that you had wondered about is, you know, competing at the elite level, and then those who want to compete on the college level. Not everyone's going to go there on scholarship or be recruited. A lot of them will be walking on. So there's different scenarios that the kids will experience. But then, of course, you know, mom and dad are always involved because there's financial investment involved. So there's a lot of things to plan for, and there's a method behind it. Those who know the method helps a lot, but many parents don't. And I've thought about even putting together like a handbook, you know, so that way it's easier. I can hand them a handbook, say, okay, read up on this. It'll give you 90% of the information. Then the other 10%, we can work on it one-on-one. I can guide you through and help you do what you need to do based on your family's decision, you know? Because not every, in wrestling, I think like 1% wrestlers actually wrestle in college throughout the country. And that's a very small percentage.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thanks for that advice. Well, we're about coming to the end of the interview. I know you're doing something else kind of exciting now with the foundation that you helped found. Maybe tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Yeah, it's I came home to Hawaii, and I felt that community is really important to me. That saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And I want to be able to contribute into building a village or helping the village. So communities were big for me. I built this foundation. It has 8 pillars, and they all sync up together. We're using farmland. So I was able to working on acquiring about 70 acres of good land on Oahu. As you know, land is super expensive in the United States, especially in Hawaii. It's gorgeous. We want to do education, Hawaiian education culture, farming, construction, health, charter school, community center, retreat center, and athletics. So they all sort of like linked into each other and serve the community in and around where the land is, but also have a program that actually pulled in folks from globally. So it's not religious based at all. It's mostly community based program. And it's called Lao Foundation is the name. We're 501c3. And yeah, we just 2 years into it. A couple of board members who have started a very successful foundation who sits on my board and got a lot of great advisors. It's on our website, callallfoundation.org. But it was a dream of mine where outside of work, I would like, and even, I continue to coach, but the community foundation is something that I dream of doing. And hopefully that would be, I'll give up doing work in telecom space. And then this will be my full-time job.
Well, that's exciting that you're giving back and doing that. Some great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And, anytime you're in Hawaii, look us up. We have a retreat center. And we love to have both of you guys and even your family come stay.
Yeah, I'd love to get back there, spend some time on the Big Island. Not a lot of time haven't spent a lot of time on Oahu, but it's a beautiful place, and hopefully we get there someday.
For sure.
Well, great. Well, I think that wraps up the interview. Nara, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. Especially for the Lao American kids. Hopefully I always see many are jumping on. Becoming a fan of the page. We do the same thing in wrestling community. There's a site called Wrestlers Only. I think there's almost 150,000, 200,000 followers now. But hopefully what you do with your website, you may provide resources. Like I said, I want to put together a handbook for parents and families of elite athletes who may be to follow it and roadmap themselves towards how do you get scholarship? How do you train? How do you balance family life, school, and athletics? Yeah. So these are the type of things I didn't have. I was very lucky that my coach, who adopted me, so to speak, and his family really became my family. And he wrestled in college, so I learned a lot from him. And that's the reason why I was able to achieve what I achieved. So I think we need to pass on the knowledge. Yeah. And yes, kudos to what you're doing here.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the Hall of Fame and with the page. And we're not up to 150 or 200,000 followers like you said the wrestling page is, but maybe one day, we'll get there. So, well, great.
All right. Well, this is Coach Chandetka with my co-host John Messina. If you guys haven't already, please like, share, or follow our page. And if any of you know of anyone that would be a great subject for our podcast, please send us a message. All right, Nara, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Aloha, guys.
Aloha. Good night. The C4 podcast is brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com, celebrating the first, inspiring the next.